Romance at a glance. Romance at a glance.
What you say now?
Romance at a glance.
Go ahead, girl.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Romance at a Glance. I'm your host, Bridget, and with me, as always, is my host, Shawnee. How are you?
I am so good, Bridget. I'm ready to do nothing for Thanksgiving. I'm ready to relax with my mimosa and chill. How you doing?
I'm doing stupendously. I am doing many things. I'm painting. If you guys follow us on Romance at a Glance, you know that I am painting the room that will become Shawnee and I's new office at my house. And I'm landscaping my yard. I'm taking care of my children. I am not having the relaxing weekend you are, but I'm happy for you.
Oh, Bridget, we just got in a really awesome review.
You're right. On the up and up, thank you so much for your review. Here's what it said. The podcast I have always been looking for! Exclamation point. I know there had to be a great podcast out there about romance novels, and I am so glad to have finally found it! Exclamation point. I love exclamation points. The hosts are witty and intelligent. Love hearing them cackle over this awesome, ridiculous genre. Well, why thank you on the up and up. We appreciate you and the fact that you know us. You get us. We are witty. We are intelligent. And we do love to cackle.
Yes, we do. We nasty.
Guys, if you would like to leave the show a review, head down into the phone app or website of your choice, and you can see a link that says, leave us a review. Click it. Leave us a review. It really helps the show, really helps us out, moves us up those charts, and gets us to more listeners.
Yes, and we may read your review on the podcast because we like doing that.
Yeah. Heck yeah, we'll read your review, and if you drop us some book recommendations, we will definitely take those into consideration.
Oh, yeah, for sure. We are going to be talking to Talia Hibbert this episode, and it was delightful.
Guys, she's a goddamn treasure. This is Authors at a Glance has been such a bomb diggity adventure for us. We originally were never planning to interview authors, and in May we were like, you know what, let's start doing it. Let's just see how it goes. And it has been so cool. Everyone is so different, but so kind and so generous with their time. And we learned so much about her and her books and how she likes to write and about all of her fun stuff that she has coming up. And we got to talk about the Brown sisters, and we got to talk about Work for It and all the diverse pairings. I loved her.
I loved her a lot. I really love that she included content warnings on her books.
Mm-hmm.
That was a big thing.
Yes, definitely. And also, I would like to say that I did pick her because she's British and it's Thanksgiving week, and I did not want to put any of our American authors in Thanksgiving week because they have, well, maybe smaller Thanksgivings than normal this year because of COVID, but it's still Thanksgiving. So hello, Talia Hibbert, our beautiful British author. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you for being here. Guys, without further ado, let's get this shit popping.
Let's get it popping, Bridge.
Thank you for being here. It's so exciting to meet you. We've obviously read your books and super excited to...
Thanks for having me on here. It's very exciting to chat. So
I started out this summer reading Get a Life, Chloe Brown, Taking on Danny Brown. Huge fan. They were amazing. I love them. And so to preface this, I crafted our season that's coming up as our holiday mashup. So each holiday I picked a couple books that would sort of correlate with like Halloween time sort of feel, some Thanksgiving, down home boys, country boys sort of feel, and then some Christmas books. And I originally wanted to do Mating Huntress, but Shawnee only does audiobooks. She doesn't do...
and it's not on audio.
Yeah, so then I was like, had it all planned out, and I was like, okay, I got to rearrange. So then I was looking through your back catalog, and we chose Work for It, because I was like, a farmer, a city boy, it's love, and I was like, I'm into it. So that is the book we settled on, and I'm just so excited because you write such like rich characters and fun, and like even though everyone has a lot of different backgrounds, you treat them with such respect as they get to know each other and go through those like little communication like hiccups without like it always having to be a big blow up every time. And I really appreciated that because I'm not going to like spoil any of the books, obviously, but it's always sad when you're like 85% of the way through a book and you're like, oh, they're going to have a huge fight that's going to get resolved in 3 more pages. And I like that they feel like appropriately sized and not something that you like really are like, they probably couldn't come back from that disagreement.
Well, that's good. Thanks.
So Shawnee and I were talking right before this because Shawnee has long suspected that she might be on the spectrum, but was never tested, never, Shawnee can get into it more, but yeah. I'm wondering, were you tested as a child to figure that out? Did you come to that realization later? Because she didn't know what was going on and it still hasn't, made an appointment yet, but
I was diagnosed as a child, but it was a bit weird because my mum is actually a behavioural expert. She works in SEN. And essentially, when she started training as a teacher, and she was naturally interested in that because she, as an adult, has been diagnosed with ADHD. So she was interested in that sort of thing. And as she was learning, she realised that I was super autistic. So she kind of started trying to do things to help me from that point. But I don't think it was until later on that I got a diagnosis officially. I was still a child, but there was a point where I wasn't diagnosed, but my mum had decided that I was autistic.
I had, my mom is like kind of the opposite in terms of she kind of doesn't believe any of this kind of stuff exists. She doesn't believe in ADHD. She thinks it's all, everything is diet and vitamin based and that sort of thing. So I very viscerally remember coming home from school and being like, Mom, I'm having this problem in class. These things are happening. I don't know what's going on, or whatever. And she'd be like, okay, you're going to go to bed earlier and we're going to start you on some echinacea. And so after a while, I just stopped saying anything. I just, and when I look back at all the ways I kind of coped getting through school, there are all these weird, tricky things that I would do. And as an adult, I'm a part of actually a Discord group where, which is a lot of women who suspect that they're autistic are in there kind of sharing their experiences over time. And I was planning before COVID actually to go in and see a therapist and, and attack this. And then obviously COVID hit. And so everything's got been pushed back. But as I was reading more and more about you, I was like, there's a lot that sounds very similar. So that was interesting.
I'm glad that that you've made this decision to investigate and kind of make things easier for yourself. Because when you're different from not just everyone around you, but from the way the system is set up for you to be, you do have to figure out all these weird coping mechanisms and you get by, but then you might discover, I know it's happened to me, I've had my own little mechanism and then I discover something else and I'm like, oh, that makes way more sense. I should have been doing that. So I hope it helps.
I do. I definitely hope it helps. There is a girl here, I forget her name, Studio Moochie is her Instagram. But she later on discovered that she was autistic and that she was encountering something called autistic burnout. And she was describing it. And I was like, wait a minute. that crash that happens. And so it's definitely been a very interesting trajectory over the time. And Bridget has been along for this ride in general. Bridget's whole family, just as a side note, has been we were reading about how long it took you to get your diagnosis for fibromyalgia and how you weren't believed. And so in the last year and a half, Bridget has followed me on a medical journey where the doctors don't know what I have and will not help me to find a diagnosis and have been extremely brutal in the process. And Bridget's mom had to come with me to my doctor visits just so that they would actually treat me fairly. So it's been, so I definitely understand when you're like, nobody's listening. I'm like, I hear you. I hear you. I'm listening. I hear you. But so it was really cool to hear about your books, because Bridget actually told me, she's like, Shawnee, you gotta read these books. You gotta read them. So I am right now, I'm reading, obviously work for it, but Get a Life, Chloe Brown is on my to-do my next book to read in my leisure book, because we read so many books with a podcast. I honestly find that I don't have time for leisure reading.
Yeah.
So that's my next book. So I'm excited for it.
Yay.
For sure.
Well, I hope you like it.
Yeah. How did you, so obviously like fibromyalgia is part of your story and autism as well, but how do you like, do the characters come to you and you're like, ooh, like I know who that is. I know what that experience is. Or do you sort of come to it slowly and add in things as you go along and interweave those differences and diversities and backgrounds and, queer characters and non-queer characters?
It definitely happens in both ways, kind of. Some characters come to me like fully formed. Like, for example, Chloe's character came to me exactly as she ends up in the final book. But then the other characters I kind of built around her. And, some parts of them would be like set from the beginning, but then other parts I'd be like, what would go well with her? So, for example, her sister's personalities were very much built to fit the fact that she was like an archetypal oldest child. So I was like, okay, we need a textbook middle, we need a textbook youngest, like that.
Yeah, I'm super excited about Eve Brown. I got approved for the ARC and I'm thrilled to get into it. How do you stage the series? So like, because you've written a couple different series, some of them were self-published, obviously before this in your backlist, and then this is your first traditional published one. Do you kind of plot the whole series out, or do you just kind of know, hey, the next book will be about Danny, and that's kind of like where you start from?
Yeah, it's pretty much that last one. It should be. I've actually, just before we started recording, I was plotting a new series and I wrote like notes for book 1, and then book 2 was like a sentence, and I was like, that'll do. We'll figure it out when we get there.
Yeah, there's plenty of space to figure it out. We've talked to a bunch of authors now, and we find that I think the most encouraging thing for any aspiring writer to listen to is there's no one way to do it. However you do it, however you get your book out is the way that makes sense for you. And that is the book you should write, the way you should write.
100%. Yeah.
Okay. So we read that Nalita Singh's side series is one of your favorite series.
Yes.
And so I'm just curious, okay, because you are an author, okay? You are an author. You out there.
Allegedly.
Mm-hmm. And Nalini Singh is an author. Nalini Singh is your peer now, okay?
I wouldn't say that. I would not say that.
I'm saying it. How does it feel to be peers with Nalini Singh? I'm just saying.
I reject that statement.
We are interviewing her coming up, and couldn't be more like,
freaking out. I think it's more like the, me and Shani write other stuff too, but the difference between writing for yourself and even finishing a book for yourself, but then publishing it and people read it, people like it. And now I've written a bunch of books that people like and read. And now I've written books that are traditionally published that people love and, are sharing everywhere. And I see them constantly all over social media. When Shani saw a picture of you, she's like, oh, I've seen her picture before. We see her all the time. And I think it's less about Nalini Singh specifically and more, you're an avid bookworm, have been your whole life. How does it feel to now be like, you could walk into a bookstore and buy your books? Like you're right next to them on the shelves. Like, what's that like?
I had to have like a serious mental readjustment because like when people say you're an author, I'm like, And I really, for a long time, was like behaving as a reader to a point where I really shouldn't have been, to be honest, because it just was not in my head that like I am an author now, because that's just so weird to me, purely because like, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this, I suppose I do like deify a lot of my favorite authors, and maybe like the act of writing a book, I suppose it's one thing when you read a book and it's a finished product and it's amazing and you're like, oh my God, whoever made this must be a god. So with my own books, I know how I made them, and it wasn't very godlike. So I don't have that same feeling. But yeah, I guess technically I am an author.
I mean, not technically, you are. We're interviewing you because you're an author on Authors at a Glance. I had this similar thing. So I don't write books, but I write for a living. And I had the strange thing where someone's like, what do you do? I also consult. So I was like, I usually tell people like I'm a consultant, and I also write things. It's kind of how I used to say it. And someone was like, yeah, but do you make money writing? And I was like, yeah. And then they're like, well, you're a writer. And I was like, touche. You got me there. Your logic is sound. I would love to know about the like self-published, having complete control of your project aspect versus traditional publishing where you have an editor, you have the publishing house. Like how does that work in terms of balancing, like how fast you can write a book and publish it whenever you want to, how, you have to hit deadlines, you have to kind of be in the marketing machine and let them pick the covers. Like how did that feel for you, the differences?
It was really strange because obviously they both have their benefits. I think the benefits of self-publishing really depend on your personality. I think you have to be a bit of a control freak, maybe, which I definitely am. But then there is also a lot of pressure with being in control. Whereas with traditional publishing, you maybe lose the pressure because literally all you have to do is write the book. And the cover designers are like obviously I have a cover designer. I don't design my own covers because I'm bad at art. But the people who tell the cover designers what to do, that's their job. So you're confident that they're good at it. Whereas when you're doing it yourself, maybe you're not so confident that you're good at it. So I think with traditional publishing, there was less pressure. And with self-publishing, there's more control, but more pressure. And I've been really lucky so far that no one in traditional publishing has really asked me to do things that I've been like, I don't want to do that. I like my covers. I get along really well with my editor. And I feel like we have the same kind of vision for the books. So I think I've had a lucky time of it.
Do you think you'll self-publish again in the future, or do you think you'll stick towards more traditional publishing?
I will definitely keep self-publishing because the one downside of traditional publishing that's very much a me thing is that I have a very unpredictable body, and being able to control my deadlines is maybe more important to me than it might be to someone who doesn't have my conditions. I'm not a person who can say with 100% certainty, yes, I will get this done by this date, because who knows, my arm could fall off. I couldn't say. So I definitely prefer self-publishing because I can push it back if I need to, or decide the release date at the last minute, things like that. That's just a personal comfort for me. So yeah, self-publishing for fun, I think. And for money, obviously, because this is my job and I need food. But
I understand that, that idea of keeping things flexible, because you don't know when your body is just gonna decide that today is not its day.
Exactly.
And you feel, and then at least for me, I feel guilty because I feel like a flake. So it used to be that I would not flake on anybody no matter what. If I told you I was gonna be there, I would be dead or there. Literally, there was a certain point where I was be in the hospital in the day and then performing on stage at night. That's how aggressive I was at it. And then when at a certain point, obviously that's unsustainable. And I had to tell myself, it's okay to tell people that you can't, you just can't do something, Yeah. And luckily, for the podcast and stuff, I'm always like, Bridget, and she's like, cool, I'll see you the next day, or I'll see you whenever, or when,
Yeah, I was one of the main people who was like, Shani, I don't think that you should be going to this shoot you have tonight. She's like, yeah, but I was like, well, as your friend, I don't think you should go. I think you should just call them. You're like, I can't call them. And I was like,
I must make it.
I was like, your health is so important.
So I do understand that where you're self-publishing is ideal because then you're on your own timeline, and then you won't feel so that's pretty cool. Now I'm curious also to know, okay, so you build your, protagonist, but when you're trying to build the love interest in your books, right? When you're building the personality, how do you do that based on the character you've already created? How do you build someone that will fit them?
It's very kind of basic. I kind of think, say with Chloe, I'll think, what is her main issue that kind of, we all have that one thing that when something holds us back, it's usually because of that thing. Like a certain insecurity that we have, or something that's not technically true about ourselves, but that we've internalized. I try and sort that out. And then I think, okay, what kind of person would support this character or put them in positions where they're able to remember that actually I can overcome the thing holding me back. So I feel like for Chloe, she is obviously very closed off and maybe a bit scared of failure because she maybe feels like she's failed at things in the past. And so I needed someone who would be very supportive, easygoing, so that she doesn't feel a lot of pressure, like we were just saying, when you have to pull out of things at the last minute, stuff like that. I needed someone who would be chill, so that instead of worrying about their expectations, she would have space to reflect on her own feelings. So that is why Red, her love interest, wound up being like very easygoing, very, very much a people person, very caring. I just try and balance them together.
Shawnee, one thing that you're also going to love about Red, first of all, he's a smoke show and he has long hair, which I know that you like. Secondly, he also believes her right away, which I thought was such an undervalued thing in life, especially for maybe even someone like me who the pregnancies in my life and my knee surgeries have been the worst pain I've been in, but they were very concise moments of time. They were like a defined period in which things were not great, but then, I have recovered and now things are fine again, health-wise. And I thought it was wonderful that despite the fact that there is no real evidence, there's no scar, there's no blood, there's no scraped skin, there's nothing that he can see aside from that he sees her eyes are tightening or she's moving slower, and he immediately believes her and makes her tea and takes care of her, and there's no feeling of oh, but I wish we could be together. He's just oh, well, clearly tonight's not the night for the nookie, so let's cuddle on the couch and and I'll just sit here with you. And I thought that was the most romantic and wonderful thing that I wish that all people would know, is that you don't owe those things to other people. They should see you as you are, believe who you are, who you say you are, and then take care of you and however, you need to be taken care of. And Shawnee, I think that you're going to love the book.
I think so too. And I think the older I get and the more I've dealt with any sort of all this medical stuff, the more that becomes a sexy phrase to me, which is this I see something looks like it's not right. You just need to chill. Do you want to just sit and chill? Is that, you want to put a movie on the projector? We can put a movie on the projector. Let's do that. And I'm you're so sweet. Oh my God, you're so sweet.
Peak romance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sploosh.
You want a cup of tea and some Reese's? Yes, I do.
Yes, I do. That's awesome.
How do you, so one thing we've been talking about a lot, and we actually just had this amazing interview with Suzanne Brockman, which will come out right before your interview. And one thing she was talking about is the erasure of people who are different. So if I, let's say as a white author, wrote a book and said something oh, I'm uncomfortable writing characters who are not white because I maybe don't want to steal an own voice's author's book, or maybe don't feel comfortable writing those books. And Suzanne brought up this idea to us of, but then you're erasing. If you're not willing to put in the work and do the research and they figure out people different than you and put them in your books, because they're in real life. They're, people who are different than you are all over. They're not there. But if you don't write them in a book, then it's they don't exist. And how important it is for all authors, not just authors who are in that sort of own voices space, but maybe are an author, who like you might be expected to write a more diverse romance because you're a Black author. And like, I would love to hear what your thought. I mean, obviously you do write an incredible gamut of diversity, and I think your books are awesome for it. But like, what would you encourage other authors about doing the research and feeling comfortable and kind of making sure you represent the world as it is?
I think for me, like the books I write have always stemmed from me wanting to write reality. And so I feel like it's the same issue. You know, I see a lot talking about, say, sports romance. You have white authors who are writing like American football romance and all the heroes are white. And obviously I'm British and I don't like sport. Even I know that that is ridiculous.
Yes.
That's just not, it's not realistic.
Yes.
So that's very much a conscious choice to erase reality. And like, obviously that's quite an extreme example, but you see it in all kind of completely white or completely straight or completely neurotypical books. There's definitely been a decision not to write reality. And I feel like in some cases that might come from people having like very small worlds themselves, which is maybe, without casting aspersions, something that they need to think about in their personal life, because I live in a really small white town and it's not very diverse at all, but there are still different people here, you know, and like I know those people because I don't have some kind of, I don't know, aversion to knowing those people. So naturally, over the years, I've come to know them. And I feel like it's just normal these days. Well, I say these days, but it's been normal for like the past, 500 years to live.
5,000 maybe?
To like live in a community with different people. So if you genuinely are not able to fathom characters who are different from you, I really do feel like that might be a personal problem. This might upset some people, but I don't care.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I said on the when we were talking to Suzanne, I basically said like, so most of the time when we're talking to white authors, they'll say that they don't feel like it's their place to write that character. And I go, but I was like, but you write a cowboy, you write an astronaut.
Exactly.
You research, right? You talk to people, you know what I mean? Like it's no different than researching any character whatsoever. And even like when I was trying to put it in a personal place for me, because when I was a kid, I used to write so much fan fiction and I had notebooks and notebooks and notebooks that I would just sit for hours and write. And I write about my friends, you know, and I was thinking like as an adult, I would like to do that again. I remember in middle school having like a friend of like nobody in our friend group was the same ethnicity. It was like, or like, you know, it was like me, we had one white girl, we had this girl from Iran, we had a girl from India, it was like, we were all kind of like the outcasts, like nobody wanted to hang out with us. So we became our own fun clique, you know, of dorks. And like, so I would write about my friends. And if I did that today, I would have to go research, you know, like, but I should still be allowed to write about my friends. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's definitely, yeah.
I feel like, you know, I don't think that, I'm not saying like white people should write main characters who are people of color. I would never say that for many reasons. But I feel like to have a completely all white book, or even worse, this is my favorite, when the whole book is white, except for the villain and the servants, which happens. You wouldn't think that would happen so often, but it does. It happens so often.
Yeah.
I read a lot, like specifically to review now as well. And every time I'm like, oh, you completely rat fucked yourself there. Am I allowed to swear on this?
Yes.
Oh yeah,
are.
fuck
yes,
shit, anal.
This is a very explicit podcast. When we get into Work For It, I'm sure we will spend about 10 minutes just talking about the Work For It cover, because that cover, did you get to go to the shoot and did you spritz the steamy, you know, sweat on his back as he was flexing? Like,
no, that was just like a stock photo. And it's actually a really popular one because I've seen it.
It is. I've seen it. I've seen it. So it's so funny because there's because I used to produce audiobooks, but I will see the same covers, the same people come through like so much. There's this one guy who always plays like the Russian, like the mob boss that is on every cover, especially after 50 Shades of Grey came out. Like he must have been making bank on whatever stock footage like website that he came off of. But yesterday at the shoot that I was on, one of the models was a romance cover model. And so we got to talking, and he was telling me that because he's been on so many covers, now he goes to like romance conferences. And he was like, y'all ladies are some horny ass ladies.
Oh dear.
I was like, you're not wrong. I'm not gonna say you're wrong.
There's a reason why romance is like a $2 billion industry, man. We're here for the feels and for the sex.
Well, it's the equivalent of like, we have something called Exotica, which is like a huge porn convention, right? When you go there, people are kind of inappropriate because it's a huge porn convention. And I think kind of a romance novel convention can probably be a little bit like that, where you're like, well, this is romance. This is like the equivalent of like, you know, like a calmer, more subtle porn convention. Like
I've never been to a romance conference. I was going to before COVID, but then COVID. And I was always really hesitant to go to one because I was like, what if people ask me questions or talk to me in general? So
Shawnee went to a podcast conference last year before COVID, and she called me on the first day. She's like, Bridget, I want you to know that for you, because I was in Atlanta, so I couldn't go. I was in LA. She's like, for you, I will talk to people, and I will be nice, and I will be just like you, and I will be friendly, and I will give them my business card, and I will do all the things, but I want you to know I'm only doing it for you. And I was like, you signed up for this conference. I didn't make you go there. Try and blame me for this nonsense.
I was really trying. Like I got a free ticket to go, and it was like an expensive ticket. So it was like, okay, I'm not going to not go because we need to learn about podcasting and get in the community and blah, blah, blah. But it was a whole lot of people, and the overwhelm, like the whole like wanting to shut down and go back to my room and like just curl under my thing and I had to fight the feeling the whole time. Half the time I had to fight not to like stand in the corner. I was like, Shawnee, just go talk to people. Come on, 1, 2, 3, we can do it. We can do it. We can do it. We can do it.
Oh my God.
So yeah.
I want to talk about sex on the page because it's really important in romance.
Yes.
For me as a reader, I would like to be let in. I've been let into all of the other emotions. I would like to be let into that aspect of the relationship also.
Fair enough.
How do you decide how much sex should be in the book? How do you decide, like, do you said Chloe Brown kind of came fully formed. Did you already know kind of what sex style and situation she would be in, or did those come as you were writing and you're like, oh, this is a nice moment for XYZ?
I think I think the amount of sex in my book really varies and depends on the book. Like I know that my books, I think, yeah, they all have sex in. But I don't think they would have to. Like there are loads of romance novels without sex that I really enjoy. And I really enjoy slow burns as well. So there are romance novels with little sex that I enjoy. But then when I sit down to write, they just be like banging. And I don't plan it. It's more like, I don't know. I guess I'm trying to write people who are super into each other. And then for me, that always leads to them. They're super into each other, like emotionally, and they want to be friends and hang out. But then they're also always just super horny for each other. I don't know why that happens, but it happens. So I don't plan out anything that's going to happen with the sex scenes until I kind of come to the sex scene, if that makes sense. In terms of where they're going to be, I don't really plan that either, but I will kind of make a note of if they reach this emotional point here, then it might be good for the pacing for a sex scene to happen, because obviously I feel like you should put sex scenes in for a reason. This is just for me. Like I read a lot of books that have pointless sex scenes and I love them. Shout out to those books. But in my books, I'm like, oh, I want the sex scene to do something. So I might be like, I need them to fall out. So they're going to have sex and then they're going to be sad about it, or something like that. But that's about as much planning as I do.
So Okay. So Bridget and I work in like visuals and post-production, and we shoot a lot and we film a lot and that sort of thing. And we kind of find that a lot of times we really find the story once we get to post and once we're in the edit. And so we're curious as to like from your first draft to what it finally is. Do you have the story from the jump? Are you really finding it in the fine tuning? And have you ever had to like take a real hard left, like, or has the story ever taken a big turn after you've edited it?
I think it definitely varies. There are books that are a lot closer to like, I feel like I have one true story in me that is the easiest, most natural story I could ever write. And I've written that. So now I have to write other stuff. And the closer a book is to that one true story, the more it instantly comes together and the less I have to kind of change it. But then when I'm trying to be like very daring and go out of my comfort zone, that's when editing takes forever and things go left and right and upside down. Like Take a Hint, Danny Brown is a great example of that because I rewrote that whole book like 4 times and each version was pretty different than the other versions. Which is possibly the most work I've ever put into like figuring out what I want a story to be. So it depends basically, but editing is definitely, I mean, this is like the most basic thing you could say, but editing definitely makes my books better. But
well, we appreciate that because, you know, we've been reading a lot more. We're trying really hard to have diversity in our slate because as we were researching different podcasts and just like for our own enjoyment, we wanted to have, obviously, like we've made a conscious decision in the future to never have a closed door romance again, just because we don't like reading open door romances. So we don't want to like rate a book worse just because it doesn't have something we know it's not going to have. That's not very fair. Other podcasts will review that book, other bloggers and stuff, and that doesn't have to be us. But we also try really hard to have like, you know, a diversity in authors, indie versus traditional publishing, a diversity in the character pairings. So not all of them male, female, not all of them the same ages, not all of them in like the same situation of their life or the same countries, even same time zone, same historical versus modern versus paranormal. And like one of the coolest things is discovering a lot of self-published authors along this route. And unfortunately, we've also discovered that some people don't spend the money for an editor. And I think that like, if I could encourage an indie author, not being one myself, the one thing I would say is like, it's worth it to really have, because nothing's more distracting than reading the first chapter and you've already noticed a bunch of like typos or the sentence structure feels a little awkward. It's so hard to get into the romance and into the story if you're like distracted by things that feels like you could have avoided.
Yeah, like when I started publishing, I don't think I've ever said this in public, but I didn't edit any of my books. Or rather, I did edit them, but I edited them myself because I had no money. And I was obviously super uptight about it because as a reader, if I'm reading something and it's just like you say, throwing me out of the story, I've got like 1,000 books I can read. So I'll be like, no, thanks, and just get rid of it. So being conscious of that, I was so anxious and I would like proofread 1,000 times and I had 3 different apps on my computer to check it. And still, you know, when I did start making money, I went back and had my earlier books edited and still there was so much stuff. And I was like, oh God. It's tricky.
I think there's so much romance community, especially of indie authors. And I feel like there could be some just sort of link up where people just help each other edit each other's books, because it doesn't matter how good you are at writing and not having typos, you can't see errors in your own situations. You just don't see them because you just read right past them.
Too many times, yeah.
There's definitely those communities, but because I'm me, I didn't talk to anyone on making
Do you use what do they call them? Pre-readers? What are they called, Johnny? The
like beta readers?
Beta readers. That's the word. That's what I'm looking for. Yeah, beta readers.
You got the sensitivity readers and the beta readers.
Yeah.
When I started, I had my friends doing that for me. They still do it for me now. But back then they were the only other people reading the book, whereas now they're just like the first people reading the book. But yeah, I had that. And now, like I have made author friends. It's just taken me like a really long time. But now that I also have like author friends who will do a swap with me or check something out. And that has really made everything so much less anxiety inducing. Because like you said, you can't really see your own errors no matter how hard you try.
Yeah.
Plus the like community of like they've been there. They've had a roadblock where they're like, I just don't know how to get out of this scene, or I don't know how to like wrap this part up. They like, even just like, I find it so cathartic just to share it with someone who's in that same zone and be like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but something's broken. Fix it for me. And they just say like one little phrase like, oh yeah, me too. You could try XYZ. And you're like, oh, duh.
Gas.
Well, like we read some like big authors' books recently where we got to the end and we were like, what happened there? Like, like the book was so good until the very end where we're like, what hard left? So like, it doesn't actually, for me, I'm like, it doesn't matter what level you're at in your writing, you're always going to get to that point where like, you're like, I don't know how to finish this shit right here, you know? But it's one of the things that, this is like a side thing. It's like Bridget and I read a couple books. And so I'm hyper literal. One of the things about me is that my brain fixates on certain things. So if you tell me a story and you start giving me details of a story, and then at some point what you're saying doesn't match a detail from the beginning, it kills something. I'm like, wait, I start fixating on that. Wait, I don't understand how that could happen. Okay, if so-and-so did this, and this, then how did, or whatever. And Bridget's like, it's a fun story. I'm like, it doesn't make sense, Bridget. It doesn't make sense.
Shawnee really struggles with like the suspense romance genre. And she's like, why would they be having sex right then? And I was like,
oh my God, I do. Oh my God.
Why are they doing that? That doesn't make sense.
And I'm like, because
stop having sex.
they have 2 hours during this stakeout before the bad guy comes. What else are you going to do but go to Pound Town, Shawnee? You're going to Pound Town. That's what you're going.
Yeah, absolutely my hard line, because like I've been in danger, right? And I didn't want to have sex. I wanted to feel nauseous and like rock back and forth for a while. Not like with someone else, just alone with my clothes on. So yeah, I struggle with that too. Like I know for a fact that there are personality types, usually the personality types who find themselves in suspenseful situations, who would be like, "Oh, now's a great time to bang." But for me, no, can't do it.
Wouldn't even have gotten into that situation, because I always tell my friends I see a bad situation coming 10 miles away, and I'm like, "Nope, I'm out of here. See you later."
Go home. Yeah. I wouldn't be at the stakeout, okay? Because I'm not going to put myself in these positions. I'm at home, okay? Eat dinner.
You know what, Talia? In this situation, it was because an ancient artifact happened to be in your house and they thought you still had it. But really, the people before had it. You had to track it down to get yourself out of danger. It's not like you put yourself in the situation. The situation happened to you, okay?
What I would say to that is, this is why I don't answer the door. Don't knock on the door. Don't call my phone. I'm not here. I don't know
You must be loving COVID, only because, not because of obviously all the horrible things, but because me and Shawnee were talking about like, you don't ever have to say no to anyone anymore, because no one's having dinners, no one's having events. You don't have to say like, oh, I can't meet for coffee because XYZ. Just like, no one invites you because you can't go anywhere. You can't do anything.
Well, like, and also like before COVID, so like my band merch is all this like personal space merch. So I have a shirt that says "Not a hugger," like "Do not disturb," empath at work. Stuff that really says, "Hey, take a step back," or whatever. And so I'm like, now I'm not expected to hug anyone. Now people don't just come up and,
touch you anywhere.
If people actually give you boundary space.
That's like fabulous. My favorite thing is like when people come to deliver things, you open the door and they've already left. They've just put it on your doorstep. Love that. I can just wave. I don't even have to speak. Because when I speak to people is when the problems arise. I can just wave in silence and go inside again. Loving that.
There's a ramen house in I want to say it's in Japan. I don't know if they have one in the States or anywhere else, but where there's no human contact to get your food. So you put in your order, you're in a little cubicle with a curtain. They just stick your food in front of it or whatever, and you never have to interact with a human being. And I was like, this sounds fabulous.
All the benefits of eating at home, but you don't have to make it yourself. I love that.
Nope. Yeah, and they have all the extra spices you might not have. They have some ideas percolating.
The ginger.
They're actually like good at cooking and like me. Perfect.
Okay. So let's talk audiobooks, because I'm curious actually, if you have any say in your audiobooks, who the narrators are when you're with your publisher. And then when you're self-published, how are you finding your narrators, and what's the process like of working with the narrator? I kind of know this a little bit from the other side as a producer, but I'm very curious as to how that comes about with them.
So for my traditionally published books, they kind of send me options. And then I go onto Audible and type the person in and listen. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, they're pretty good. Well, usually I'm like blown away. This person, please. And I'm lucky because I always get who I want, kind of. So that's been nice. And then with my self-published books, I don't self-publish my audiobooks. My agent sells the audio rights to like audio publishers. So I have never dealt with narrators myself. But similarly, the publisher will be like, these are some options that we can approach, like have a listen, who do you prefer? And then sometimes, for example, they might suggest for the heroine, like all white voice actors. So I always Google image, whoever it is. So then I have to be like, I would like it to be a Black person, actually. And things like that, just to make sure that it like reflects the characters. But that's about as much as I really do. And I don't really listen to the audiobooks, like my audiobooks, because I don't like reading my own books. So I haven't really done my due diligence, you might say, and I'm not going to.
Do you listen to audiobooks, not of your own audiobooks? Do you listen to audiobooks, or are you, because I have listened to maybe a couple here and there if I have to, but I very much don't prefer it because I find it's very distracting. The voices are very distracting for me. But when I'm reading a book, I immediately can like build the world in my mind and I get lost in it. I can read a whole book front to back, no problem, without getting up, moving, or doing anything but reading. But audiobooks, I find that I'm like, wait a minute, what are they talking about now? Where are we in the story? Do you like to listen, or are you a reader?
Well, when I decided to give audiobooks a try, I can't remember why exactly, but the first one I got was one of the Immortals After Dark series by Cresley Cole. And I don't know if you guys have listened to that series.
We just did a podcast on it like a couple days ago.
Yeah. So the narrator, I want to say his name is Robert Petkoff.
Yes.
He is like, what? Like, incredible. Changed my life. And he is so commanding that I listened to the whole series on audio. I was like, audio is amazing. This is incredible. I love this. And then I finished the series and I bought a different audiobook and I couldn't concentrate on it at all. And like, it's like you said, I'd be like drifting off and I'd be like, oh, is this person still talking? What did they just say? I was thinking about socks. And that's happened to me with every audiobook that I've tried to listen to since. Only Robert Petkoff can hold my terrible attention span.
Yeah, it's interesting because that happens to me all the time. The first audiobook I ever read was or listened to was Stephen Fry doing Harry Potter. And because I had to take a 2-hour commute, I had to drop my brother off in another city at his university, then drive like an hour and a half to my university. So it was the easiest thing, like throw an audiobook. So I listened to the whole Harry Potter series this way. And Stephen Fry is amazing. I mean, he has you in the story locked in. just like waiting, you know. The Immortals After Dark series I have listened to twice over and freaking love it to death. And then you get some of these like these voices that just kind of grate. Like I'm very particular on sound. Like I have a sound sensitivity. So like some voices I'm just like, I can't. Like I just can't. I can't do it. I can't do it. So in some voices I struggle to get through. I have to keep rewinding and rewinding. So I don't know exactly what it is. But yeah, I definitely, the narrator to me can make or break a book very easily. And I can't read anymore. Bridget likes to laugh at me, but I can't physically read books anymore because my eyes don't track properly.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So pretty much audio is my go-to.
Yeah. We've done two books total of the 40, I think, that we've read so far. That did not have audiobooks. And Shawnee was like, we gotta stop. We can't do any more.
No more of that.
It took me so long to get through. And I didn't feel like I could properly review the books because I wasn't getting a continuous stream of consciousness of, you know, like when a book grabs you in and you're getting the emotion and then stop. Like, how can I rate the book properly if I don't have what the author intended, you know?
Yeah, I get that.
How did you build your fan base and like get all of your reviews and ratings? Like, especially in the early days before you had like a publishing house who's got a marketing team and you're reaching out to people on your behalf. Like, how did you kind of like slowly build your base?
With great difficulty. When I started, there were all these kind of websites that were like, we will help you get your first 50 reviews. So you pay us like $10 or whatever, and we'll give you a list of emails of people who have signed up and you can send them romance novels. And they will review you. And I was like, okay, cool. So I did that. And it was really tricky because I've never been very great with technology. So I was literally opening an email, typing in an address, attaching the book, writing a little note, and then sending it. And it took me forever. And also I found that a lot of those people didn't review it. And some of my books mysteriously appeared on pirate websites, and it was all very messy and difficult. So basically it was just a lot of trial and error and a lot of research and harassment, because I decided to only start sending my books to bloggers because obviously they have like a vested interest in not, for example, helping book pirates. So I felt safer sending it to actual bloggers. But then, of course, you have to find the bloggers. You have to read enough of the blog that you don't sound like a fool when you approach them. You have to, or I was dead set on emailing everyone like individually with a different message that like proved that I totally read their blog. So it was very time consuming. Luckily at that point I was at university, so I would just ignore my lectures and spend like the hour sending emails and stuff. It was great, amazing procrastination tool. And I guess it was all just like organic growth, because when I got a certain level of social media followers or email subscribers, I then started saying like, sign up here if you want the book early to review it. And because those people already liked my books, they were more likely to give me nice reviews. So that worked out well. But I'm glad I don't have to do that anymore because it was really hard.
Yeah.
Do you read the reviews?
No. Oh my God, no. Just hearing that gave me anxiety. No. I don't need to know people's thoughts. No. Oh God, I'm sorry, I'm having a moment. At one point I was like, I have to read reviews because I have to know if people like my books. And I quickly learned that some people did and some people didn't. And I didn't enjoy the didn't-ness. So I decided to just ignore it forever, and I'm much happier now.
I think that is much healthier, because I was recently reading something, and actually it was Nalini Singh said, like, hey, authors, like, don't get upset by bad reviews. Like, you wrote a book. Like, if they can decide what they think about it, you don't have to read the review. And I was like, yeah, you don't. Like, we had a couple authors who are not that happy. We didn't like their book. And it's like, yeah, but like, we make this podcast for readers. We don't make this podcast for authors. Like, don't come listen to our, we didn't send it to them. We didn't tag them in anything. Like they just, I don't know, must've Googled their book or something and found it. But like, we didn't like, I've sent only like our 5-star reviews where we'd like love the book so much. I'll like send that and be like, hey, BT dubs, like we love you so much. Here's our review. Because those are nice for people to have on their website, like quotes and whatever. But I would never send a negative review to an author. I'd never tag them. Like, it's not for you. It's to tell other readers, hey, like, here's the reasons why this book didn't work for me, in case these are reasons why a book doesn't work for you, so that you don't read it and go find a different author.
Yeah, definitely. I think that, well, first of all, I, as a reader, I don't really write negative reviews anymore, for a lot of reasons. But when I was just a reader, I would write the most scathing critical reviews, and it was my right, and I enjoyed it, and it had value. And I'm like, you know what? Someone read the book, right? And that's really all I wanted. And if they didn't like it, that's fine. That has nothing to do with me as a person or with them as a person. So I don't need to get personally upset by it. But the thing is, I know you said that you wouldn't send a negative review to an author, and I just wish that everyone agreed, because some people will send you negative reviews or tag you. Instagram is the worst for this. So someone will tag me in like a gorgeous picture of my book, and I'll be like, oh, I like it. And then the caption will be like, 1 star. This book didn't work for me at all. Has the author ever read a dictionary? Then I'm like, oh God, matching my life.
Yeah. Why? Like, me and Shawnee talk about this a lot. Like, we obviously are, one of our things that we really like firmly believe in from the beginning of the podcast, that we have to be honest. So even if we get gifted copies of books, even if we have publishers in the future, authors that we really like, and we read a future book of theirs, like, we still have to give it an honest review, because again, we're doing this for readers. We want the readers to know if it's 5 stars, like, buy it today, because we don't give out 5 stars that often. If it's 4 stars, you should still buy it today, because that's a great book. If it's 3 stars, it's going to hit. If you like that genre, like, that's a solid book for you. And if it's 2 or 1, like, don't waste your time, because like, that means we really didn't like it. And, and we really firmly want that, because I see a lot of people who just give every book 5 stars. And I'm like, as lovely as books are, as lovely as stories are, they're not all 5 stars. They can't all be 5 stars.
Exactly.
We sometimes, Bridget and I'm like, they're lying on Goodreads. They are lying. And we've gotten so upset by books that have been, everybody's like 5 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars. And we read it and we're like, this is not even 3 stars. I don't know what anybody, and we just don't think people are being really honest in their reviews, And so we always kind of joke about that. And there's this other aspect that happened too, right? So with the ability for self-publishing, right, over the years, people having more control over that, it's a lot of people have started self-publishing. But because of that, I've seen what I think is a lot of people who write fan fiction, and that was their normal thing. See the success of some fan fictions that have done really well and have decided to start publishing their fan fictions. However, I think it's the equivalent of making a video for YouTube and putting it on TikTok, right? These are 2 different cultures, and the readers in those places expect 2 different types of things, and they don't translate well. So where you're building a saga over here for fan fiction, something that is chapter by chapter, when you take that and publish it as a book, very unedited, it seems like a book that's just stringing you along, like in this weird kind of escape. And so I think that's where more attention needs to be put for, because we want to support authors who are self-publishing, but I do find that I'm encountering a lot of authors who are coming in from that trajectory. And so I'm wanting them. I'm like, you have so many good ideas. I'm always to pretend. I'm like, there were so many good ideas in this. Like, I'm rooting for you, And so I'm hoping that, like, now I feel like there's so much more opportunities and people are doing so much great stuff, and you're seeing some really great writing. I'm hoping that people see that these are kind of 2 different mediums and start to really kind of, I feel like there might be a middle balance to like a slightly different genre that appears because of these 2 mergings. But I hasn't hit yet for me.
I feel like, I think it's the distinction, isn't it, between like serialized fiction that does kind of pull you along a bit, but that works for the format, and then making that or trying to make that fit a different format. So I always think that before you publish anything, you should always look like, what do I want to be like? What's doing well, or what's doing what I want my work to do? And then read it and get to know it and think, okay, do I actually fit here, or do I fit somewhere else? So I feel like if someone really enjoys that fan fiction style writing, they just need to find like the perfect place for it, like doing serial releases, or like an app like Radish, which is like a serial romance rap or something like that. Romance app.
Or, I think a lot of those, like the fan fiction books too, have taken on people writing many books that don't need to be many books. This is a soapbox I've been on, where it's a trilogy. And you had barely a duology at best. Like, how did this become 3 books?
This is such a controversial topic, because I know like authors talk about this a lot as well. They're like, okay, I want to write this story, and I think it needs to be 2 books or 3 books, but will readers hate me because readers are being so vocal right now, like about some people will die for a trilogy and love the cliffhangers and want that, but then other people are like, how dare you? Give me 1 book and 1 book only.
Well, just give me good. Right?
Yeah.
Write as much as it could be 5 books. I mean, freaking Immortals After Dark is like, what is it? 18 books, 17
now
books
or something.
Now. But it's just, give me good. If you have 3 good books, I'll read all 3. If you have 2 good books, I'll read 2. But when I get to book 2 and you're making some bullshit cliffhangers out of nothing, drama out of nowhere, just so I'll buy that extra book, I will cancel that author to me, because you have disrespected me as a reader, because you're not giving me good. You're giving me, I want your money. And that to me is the hard part of it. I'm like,
or not even like maybe they want the money, but more like you didn't think this through. Cause like that's kind of especially if I read a great first book and I'm like thrilled for the second book, and then I read the second one and I'm like, oh, this feels like a filler before you finish it in the next book, Like it feels like the second book, like nothing happens. Like, but what, like it's all just there. And I'm like, okay, well, in that case, that second book and the third book, you need to edit into 1 book, because clearly the third book has some juice. The second book, though, I'm like, nothing's happening. Give me story. I need more story. I think that's tough, though, to like when you in your mind ahead of time think, oh, I have enough for a trilogy. So that's what you write thinking. And then you get there and you're like, I don't know, like maybe the publisher, if you're in traditional publishing, is like, well, we contracted 3 books, we need 3 books, or whatever the case may be. That I think is the heartbreaking thing, when you are so thrilled about book 2 and you get there and you're like, but book 1 was so good. What happened?
But I have this all within 1 book. Like I'll be like, okay, this is going to be a 90,000 word book, and then I'll get to the middle and I'll be like, fuck, this is not a 90,000 word book. And then it's like panic stations and I have to invent a story, which is supposedly my job, but it's very difficult sometimes.
It is super hard. I mean, that's why I'm not a published author. It's very, very hard. It's like, one thing I'm impressed with you is like, considering that your body doesn't always allow you to write, how much you've written, how many books you've written. Because like, I'm not going to lie, if I had days where I was like, well, I can't type, I'd be like, well, that's the week for me. Even if like 3 days later I felt better, I'd be like, well, next week I'll try again. And I don't think I would have written, tons and tons and tons of books. Like you have, like, it's pretty astonishing the volume of your work over the time period, considering that you're not just at your computer every single day from 9 to 4,
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the reasons for that is that my brain will not leave me alone. Like I was writing before we started this call, and it was like, 7 o'clock here, and I finished work for the day. And this is actually the start of my week off. And I was like, okay, no more writing. And then my brain was like, but I have all these thoughts for you to write down. So I have to do something with them. And I have a lot of creative like ways to get my thoughts down when I can't actually type. But also, I was actually looking the other day, I did like a list of all the books I've written in the year I wrote them. And it's super depressing because in 2017 and 2018, I had no money. So I wrote like a ton. And then in 2019, I had money. So I wrote like an amount that I was comfortable and happy with. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. This is the start of the rest of my life. And then in 2020, I wrote a grand total of one book. And that is because I have just been all over the place, as has the rest of the world. And I was like, wow, hard evidence that my brain collapsed in March. Hate to see it, but I accept it.
Yeah. Very same. I collapsed for a solid 4 months.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing. I had no desire to leave my bedroom. I got stuck in Florida at my parents' house. And so I was living the lap of luxury. They were feeding me and I had no motivation to do shit. And then at about the 4-month mark, my body went like, time to be creative. Like, it was so weird.
It's so weird, like, how that happens. I honestly just don't, like I said, usually my brain won't leave me alone. I have all these ideas, but for the majority of this year, I've been like, could I please have a story? And my brain's like, no. And I'm like, but we signed a contract. We already spent the money.
I don't wanna.
Are you contracted for more books after Eve Brown?
No, that was my last contracted book. And actually, I'm lucky that it was the kind of story that I love to tell, because if I had tried to kind of stretch myself and like go out of my comfort zone with that one, it would not have gotten finished. And I would have been in trouble. But luckily, it was like a very fun, satisfying balm to like the chaos of this year. But it was definitely all I've been able to do. Well, I do have another book, a Christmas book that I'm kind of finishing up right now. But that's just a little tiny one. So
is that coming out for this Christmas?
It is. Somehow.
You know, the funny thing about Christmas is like, so last year was the first Christmas season that we were like looking for Christmas books, and we could not, it took us so long to find a Christmas book that wasn't about a divorcee, a second chance at love. And like, and we were just like, is Christmas like the
is yours a divorcee, like, second chance at love? Tell me it is. Tell me it is. Yay!
Well, kind of. She's divorced and they have never been together, but they have always kind of wanted to be together, but haven't. And he's like, okay, this
friends
is
to lovers.
See, Christmas is the second chance at love.
It's the season. It's the season.
She is a divorcee. Love that.
That's so good. Yeah, there were a lot of like single moms. There were a lot of like people leaving the big bad city to go back to like small towns and like have a real, like quote unquote, real Christmas. And
there was definitely like a theme. We were definitely noticing a theme at Christmas time.
Yeah. This year, because I'm doing only steamy romances for Shawnee as my gift to her, we found a novella that is, the description had me because it said that he was in America visiting, but he really wanted to go back home, London, to the comfort of his playroom. And I was like, oh, we go read that book.
Red Room of Pain.
Yes, exactly. Christmas BDSM. That's what we all need. That's what we all need.
We started this podcast around the time that I started my kink journey. So it's like all of our listeners have followed my kink learnings. I took like kink classes and stuff.
Oh my God. Wow.
I know. Yes. Well, because I'm very methodical in the way I do stuff. So I wasn't about to throw myself into anybody's red room of pain, you know? So I like Googled BDSM 101 and I found classes near me. And I took this whole 6-week course on the terms of everything, what safety looks like. And then they have like demos, and they even have these beginner play parties where you go and they'll teach you how to spank and like face slap and do all sorts of other kinky, like
you guys,
and stuff like that.
Talia's face, she is so excited. Her mouth's open, she's smiling. She's like, oh, tell me more.
And the best thing now is that they're on Zoom, right? Yeah. So I have a friend of mine who I know is kinky, and then she's still kind of in the whatever. So I gifted her the classes or whatever, so she could take them on Zoom. But it changed my life. It was like, because there's just, I always knew from like a very young age, but like stepping into that it's such a daunting, was such a daunting thing. So being able to go to a very structured class, with everything being very above board was like the biggest thing ever. And now the teacher of that class, she started a YouTube channel, and I actually helped her do all of her stuff so she could start the channel. Because I'm like, more people need to know and be able to learn from just their living room. You know what I mean?
Definitely. Yeah.
We'll send you the info.
There's actually I really love this indie author called Adore Ian, because her books are very, very hot, but she also I think I might have read somewhere that she did she was a sex educator at some point or something like that. Either that or she's just super into sex ed, because all her books have little handy dandy sex ed tips in there, which I love to see. And also sometimes I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. So fun-educational.
Adore Ian? Adore, is that what
yes. Yeah.
We will check that out for sure. For sure. We're always looking for new authors. We're actually we're excited because we're about to dip after this season into dark romance.
Oh, gosh.
So I think that'll be really fun because there's just so much to unpack and explore, and it's gonna be a real fun one. To we'll probably have a little disclaimer at the beginning, like this whole season is a trigger warning. So please feel free to listen to all of our back catalog if this is not for you. Oh, that was one thing I forgot to say earlier, is I appreciate that all of your books at the beginning have the content warning up front. I really, really appreciate that, because we talk about that all the time. There is nothing worse than having, I saw this cute, fun rom-com illustrated cover, and then all of a sudden there's all of these issues and maybe past abuse or neglect or rape or family strife or whatever's, going on. And we're like, whoa. I signed up for a rom-com. I signed up for a cute happily ever after with some quips and some sexy fun time. I didn't sign up for if I want to be in that mood, I want, I'm going to go for the dark cover with the mysterious looking something. And I'm like, okay, something's going on here. I know there might be something going on in this book. Yeah. And I really appreciate that you put not only the big, quote unquote, big things there's a rape in the past, or there's something that's very, very, but you also put hey, this book talks about anxiety. This book talks about depression. This book talks about you put it all there so someone can make a really educated decision to start. And I think that is maybe the coolest thing about you. I like a lot of things about you. I love your books, but I think that might be my favorite, because can we get some cool little disclaimer pictographs on the back of a book? Can we get
I want little icons, there's a little legend, little icons that mean certain things before I pick up a book. Yeah. And then they
do that, right?
They don't. No. So
there's a publisher. I wish I could remember who it was. Just I've read some of their books and noticed they have little icons on the back. That say things like, this book has a lot of sex, this book is violent, this book is scary.
Really?
Oh, we should, in my mind. I wish that was.
We gotta check it out, because most of the time, no. And then on Audible, definitely not, because there's the most minimal of information on Audible. Yeah. And a lot of times, for me specifically, I dealt with sexual abuse as a child, and it's not that I'm above reading about sexual abuse in a book. It's just used so much, and you get bogged down over time with that being the thing that's always the and so I want to pick and choose when I'm picking up a book that I'm gonna have to deal with that in, and I also want to pick and choose if the doors are closed or open. I want a little icon that has open doors or closed doors, because sometimes, look, man, I'm trying to get my fix. So if this book is not going to get me my fix, it's going to make me angry. Angry reading this book.
We recently read a book, and there was a lot of God talk, I don't know, religiousness of the main characters. And in the first chapter, Shawnee goes, oh, this book's not going to have any sex in it. I was hopeful. I was no, maybe they're going to get married at some point. And then they didn't get married until the epilogue. I was oh, well, what can you do? What can you do?
That book was so hard to get through, because I already knew. I was I'm committed, and there's going to be no sex.
my God, hilarious. Anyways, I think that's awesome. I wish more, especially more indie authors, because obviously traditional publishing, like, maybe it might be harder to, a harder conversation, or maybe you don't have the leverage to get that in the, like, right in the front. It's not like you stick it in the back, like it's like right in the front. So it's like, hey, this is what it's about. And maybe, maybe that would be harder for other authors depending, but indie authors, I think for sure could, use that as a note to let people know what they're getting into. Because also, like, as a reviewer, like, again, going back to, like, you want to have positive buzz around your book, you want to have positive reviews, you want to have champions for your book. If I'm reading a book and I feel deceived by the marketing, it's immediately going to, even if I really like it, it's still going to be a lower star, just because I'm like, that's not what I thought I was getting. So even if I might have rated it a 5, if I had known, it probably will only be a 4, just because I'm like, hey,
disappointed.
I'm, or just like wasn't ready for it. So I wasn't in the space to have that story be the right story for me.
Yeah, I think we think a lot about reader expectation in terms of, like, when we're writing the book. For example, if I'm writing a romance, it needs to have a happy ending and it needs to have this and that, because that's what the readers want. That's why they picked it up. And similarly, I feel like I need to set these expectations with the content notes, because, like you said, you want to be ready for certain topics. You want to be able to actively choose, like, it's not a case of you pick it up and you see something that you're maybe not really comfortable with in the content notes, so you don't read the book. I'm sure that does happen sometimes, but sometimes it's like, okay, I'm going to save this for when I'm in a really good place, or, like, I'm struggling at the minute, so I can't read this right now, but I can read it at another time. And, without that note, like, say you were really upset about this or that, you were having some issues that day, and you think, I'm going to get away from this by reading a book. And then you pick up the book and there it is. And you didn't know. Obviously, you're now going to hate that book for eternity, throw it out the window and feel even worse. Like, nobody wants that.
Yeah. Or maybe even, like, you don't finish it and realize, the great ending that it has, or the characters grow, or we get past it, or whatever the case may be. Yeah, I think the reader expectation thing, I think, would be, like, we have, like, we've sort of defined what our quote unquote listeners, we thought, I mean, who knows what they end up will be after we did this for years and years, but we defined what we imagined would be the listeners of our show and what they would want from us. And so that was, like, the expectations of, like, what we would deliver them, like what we wanted to deliver, and then what we sort of, but I think it's a really interesting thing. Like, you're writing the story you want to write, but also dealing with, like, the publisher expectations and, like, where the market is and what types of stories are being purchased. And like, have you ever had a book where you wrote it, but you're like, oh, I'm going to hold that till next year because I think this other book should be published first because of whatever's going on?
Well, I don't tend to have that many books ready at once. So not that organized. But I have definitely felt like, one good thing about self-publishing is that you can have a weird little niche book and it's not going to do very well, but you put it out anyway because, the people who like that are going to read it and that's going to make you happy. And it doesn't need to have as much justification as it does for a traditional publisher. So that's one thing that I love because I like to write weird little books that don't have a plot. And publishers, for some reason, demand plot, which is very unreasonable of them. But, there have been times like when I was conceptualizing Get a Life, Chloe Brown, at first, Red was going to be like a rock star or like a former rock star who was now dejected and had a pile of kittens that made him happy. And my agent was like, rock stars, this was like a couple of years ago. I feel like rock stars are back now. But she was like, rock stars aren't really in anymore. And I was like, boo, okay. Because I really wanted it to be traditionally published. So I made him an artist instead, which is like so close to the same thing.
It was great when she's watching him through the windows and she's like, I'm not going to look again. I'm just going to look again for 1 second. I'm not going to look. I'm not going to look. I'm just going to look one more time. Just nope, not doing it. I'm just doing it. Just let me just peek. Let me just see if he's not there. Okay. Like I was like, that's so relatable. It was like the most relatable moment because I've totally done that where I'm like, I'm not going to look, and you're like,
that is where the whole story started. Like I was like, what if there was this really like uptight woman who at this point in Red was a rock star. She has a new neighbor across the way who's always naked and he has loads of cats and tattoos and she's like, what the hell is he doing? And she's like looking at him, but then she keeps looking because he's really hot. And that's where the story began. So I like that bit.
It reminds me of that guy who was doing your house, Bridget, because I'll never forget him.
Oh yeah.
I came over to do the podcast and she had a guy working on something. And I was like, Bridget, that's the most beautiful man I ever seen. She's like, I know, right? I said, is it like, so I'm like, I'm trying not to be creepy about it. I just,
Yeah.
Do you need some water?
He remodeled our garage. And when he came to give me the quote, I was like, I have like very small children. I think I might have been pregnant at the time. And we were talking about, he had just had small children. So like, we were talking already about our like families and stuff, but I was like, that is a hot dude. But like, but kind of just like that's a hot dude, but whatever. I'm married and, I got kids, I'm pregnant, it's fine. And Shawty comes over and she was like, holy shit, who is that man, Bridge? Like, let's invite him in. And I was like,
I am not married. I do not have children.
Yeah, he was really great. He did very good work. I gave him a 5-star review, not for his looks, but for maybe partially for his looks, but mostly because he did excellent work. So yay for him. I don't know. I guess the only other thing is like, do you, we read a bunch of interviews you've already done, but is there something that you wish people would ask you during these interviews? Is there something you wish you could like gush about or talk about or bring up?
I'm really bad at answering questions like this. I've been asked this before and I was like, I should have prepared an answer.
No, your answer can just be, nope, whatever you ask is fine. You don't have to have an answer.
I have the reverse question, right? Is there something in interviews you'd wish was asked less?
Also
like you're like, I'm tired of talking about this thing. I'm tired of,
I love talking about like anything romance. So just being able to talk about books, they don't have to be my books, just any books. I love books. I keep trying to start a book club in my town, but no one wants to read with me.
Hey, well, it's COVID. We'll do a digital one with you. Let's do a book club.
We were just talking about that ahead of time, like doing a book club. But I mean, in general, you're like, I want to start a book club, but partly you don't want to see people like that. So like...
Exactly. I'm like an infrequent book club.
Yes, but that's my thing. Is like, I think we talked about it at some point, and we're just like, oh, what about a book club? This and that. I was like, in theory, sounds amazing, so good. However, how about like every 6 months book club?
I'm just talking about, Shawty, I'm talking about 4 books a year. That's it. That's all I'm trying to get you to agree to is 4 books a year. It's not, we're already reading them for the podcast. 4, that's it.
My dream is like for there to be a book club and someone else organizes it and it's populated by a lot of other people and I read the book and then I come in and sit at the back of the room and I listen to the people talk and I nod when I agree and I frown when I disagree and then I leave. Yeah. My dream book club.
That was my dream university classes too. Like really interesting classes where I didn't really have to participate. I could just like be a little fly in the back of the room and just be like, oh, great point. Mm-hmm, interesting. And then just bounce. Just like, that's it. Just hop right out of there. I don't need to be a part of this.
So that's why I like watching, if you go watch people's lives on YouTube and you just can comment in the box, right? You're at the comfort of your own home and whatever, and they might be like, "What's happening? What do people think about this?" And I'm like, "I can do that. I can comment on that." And that's as much as I've committed to. I'm not on camera. I'm not, doing that sort of thing. Like I have like I really like. I think recently, like we were supposed to be on camera for something, and like I like the fact that I'm not on camera for the podcast. Like I like the fact that I am just. I can be as bummy as I want to be. Like today, I did a shoot with my friends yesterday, and every time I do any sort of shoot, the next day I crash. My body just will not do much, right? Yeah. So like today, I don't have the energy to be camera ready or put my face on or whatever, So like, I just like that we get to do this podcast. It's just me and Bridget. It's a very small thing. Somebody was asking me how many people I've seen in the last month. And I was like,
3.
My partners.
My partners.
Bridget. Like, I've been home a while and I haven't even seen Bridget's second kid.
Yeah, that's true. Wait, did you see Molly? Oh yeah, you did see Molly that one day.
Molly.
That's
She
right.
stranger dangered me. But
my kids are 1 and 3. So
Oh, adorable ages.
yeah. And when Shawnee, before she left at the very beginning of March, right before COVID, she was at my house like 3 times a week at least. So like my baby like would see her coming and be like, nah, like freak out and be so excited. And now she's like, wait, you're not on the computer screen. I don't know what's happening. Usually you're in the computer when I talk to you.
Yeah, she looked at me and was like, no.
Plus she could walk now. She was like, nope, just walked away.
Nope.
Well, no, you are.
That is so cute. Oh my God. One of my sisters is 5 and we haven't been able to see her since March. And then we got like a very short window to see her. So we went to see her and I realized on site that she had forgotten my boyfriend completely. She was like, oh my God. And then she saw him and she was like, who is this man? She like politely ignored him the whole time. She's like, why did you bring this stranger here?
I like when kids do that because it's like really their cute. Faces just don't ever really lie. I mean, like my nephew, my sister's husband's white, and any white man, it didn't matter what that guy looked like. He was like, "Daddy," and my sister would be like, "Stop calling! This makes me look terrible. Stop calling people daddy."
Oh my God.
And he wasn't that small either because he's like we don't know like what, but there's definitely so like the way his brain works is just different, and so he just doesn't focus on faces at all. You know?
I do that too.
Yeah, like I tell people like I could get robbed and they could ask me, give me a description of who robbed you, and I would be like, I couldn't.
This has happened to me. I wasn't robbed, but the police came to my house and they were like, okay, describe the incident. So, because I have a pretty good memory for sounds. So I described a whole conversation like perfectly. And they were like, great, can you give us a description? And I was like, no. Yeah. And they were like, hair color? And I was like, I genuinely couldn't tell you. Could not tell you. No idea.
That's me. Like I'm what do you call it when you see something and you remember it exactly? I'm like that for audio. So whatever sounds were happening in that space, whatever was going on, I can describe it. And I can identify somebody by the way their lips move because I hyperfixate on mouths. But if you ask me anything else about the rest of their face, I would be like, I don't know. But their voice had a slight timbre and a little bit of a wobble. So that did happen in real life. I had a situation where this guy like tried to kidnap me, and
oh my God,
I couldn't remember his face to save my whole life. I think at some point I talked about this on the podcast, but like I got home and my partner was like, "What do you look like?" And I was like, I sat in a business class with this man for like 2 hours where I already knew what was going to happen. Like I already knew shit was going to go down. My spidey senses were like, you know? And so I had watched him for many hours at this point. And then he like followed me to my car and it was like a thing. And when I got home and my boyfriend was like, what does he look like? And I was like, I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you what he looked like. And then the next day I woke up in a full-blown panic attack. And his face just slammed into like my frontal lobe. Like I could see him immediately. And that was the first time I ever had a panic attack or anything like that. But it was the strangest thing that like his face just came as like this one block, just like doof. And like I'll always remember he reminded me of Mercutio from Romeo and Juliet. Young hearts,
Leonardo DiCaprio one.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, he looked just like that guy. That's my like only frame of reference. And I think my memory has started putting Mercutio as a replacement for him in my memory. If that makes sense. It's weird.
Memories are weird. Brains are so weird, especially when something like terrible is happening. It goes bonkers.
It does. It goes really bonkers. But it helps if ever I have like a trigger of that. If he's Mercutio, then I just make him sing the song like "Run home, run free," and do the whole dance, and then it like helps relieve the anxiety of it.
That is so perfect.
This has been a very, very, very lovely interview.
Yes. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. We really appreciate your time and you giving us a Friday night. Not that there's anywhere to go in COVID, but we really appreciate it anyway.
No, thank you so much for having me. It's been like super, super fun. I'm so glad I got the chance to meet you guys and chat about fun stuff. So thank you.
Thanks for listening.
Subscribe to our channel to get new episodes, clips, and more.
And click here to watch our previous reviews and author interviews.